Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? It's Matt here, your resident Zelda fan on YoVideogames. Now, I know it's been a little while, but I figured you guys probably did want to hear my thoughts and reaction to the upcoming Zelda game and the footage that was shown at the Game Awards show. Now, looking back at all of it, I want to say that I don't want to do just a reaction video or just like a gushing video. I want to do a pros and cons. Yeah, I realized it's probably a little early to be talking about the cons, but hey, let's just go over the footage, what we got, see what's good, see what works, see what doesn't work, and let's have a little discussion about the new Zelda game. Let's talk about the cons first. Better to just get the bad stuff out of the way first. The first thing that I want to talk about that's a con so far is the off-screen footage. Now, we only got a tiny little bit of gameplay direct feed at E3 this year, and then they come back with it, and the first footage we've gotten in like 6 months is off-screen play. I don't know why they're doing this. My guess is because it's just not done and they don't want people to make an opinion on the graphics too much, so they're going to show it off screen only. But the thing is, that actually makes it look even worse. I think it's the opposite effect. Showing the game off screen for the first time since its announcement in 6 months feels like a kind of a bad idea. I mean, I don't mind the fact that we get to see Miyamoto and Aonuma talking to each other, but it would have been nice to have both that video and direct feed of the footage we were given. So I think the off-screen footage is not doing the game any favors. I'm really glad they decided to give us something, but at the same time, I do feel that this only hurts the image of the game rather than help it. The second con's an easy one, and that's the questionable draw distance. When Link looks through his binoculars or Eagle's Mask or whatever the hell it is, and sets a waypoint marker, yeah, things are just not rendered. Now, we know that the Wii U is not a powerhouse machine, and we know that it's rocking far less available RAM and other things than, you know, of course, the PS4 and Xbox One, but it is still pretty noticeable when he looks ahead and there's just flat, blobby textures and no foliage rendered, nothing. I'm going to assume that, just like Skyward Sword, that Monolith Soft's probably going to be brought in late on development to help with this, because they've proven with Xenoblade and Xenoblade X that they're pretty damn good at drawing large open areas and have a decent draw distance. Maybe not an amazing, but at least decent. So I'm assuming they're actually going to come in after they finish work on Xenoblade X, which is just wrapping up according to them, and they're probably going to help out with this. So again, it's a year out. The draw distance I'm hoping is going to get fixed, and that's probably one other reason why they had off-screen, but again, it just looks even worse here. Getting into a more meaty aspect of a con, I would say one thing I'm kind of a little hesitant and afraid about for the new game is unthreatening enemies. We got our first look at a more normal moblin, bokoblin kind of enemy in the game. They're, you know, little pig shadowy guys that we see Link fighting on horseback. The problem is that anytime that a Zelda game seems to do this sort of super cel-shaded cartoony look, the enemies always take the biggest hit. They're just not threatening. They feel like something that's out of a cartoon rather than something that's out of an adventure game, and they don't bring a lot of sense of, I really want to kick this guy's ass, or this guy's kind of tough and scary. It just, to me, it really kind of hurts the image of the game more than helps it. I do believe you can honestly make threatening looking enemies that are cel-shaded and animated or cartoonish looking, but so far what we've seen, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case here. It hasn't been the case in the past. Again, this is really early. We've only seen like one big mid-boss looking creature and a couple of on-foot enemies, but so far, I'm still a little bit afraid of that we're going to get enemies that just feel more like something you'd buy in a plushie form rather than something you want to actually get in a big fight with. And the last con, and the one I feel is kind of something that is not the biggest issue for me, but I feel it's worth bringing up, is, of course, the empty-looking overworld. Again, the game is a year out, and we don't really know how much we're seeing. It did seem like a large space of land was shown of Link walking and riding across, but yeah, we really didn't see anything. Now, with the more direct feed upload we got from Nintendo directly, we can see a lot more animals, such as deer standing on the top of rocks and in the woods, and Miyamoto, of course, made the comments about insects and apples, but again, we don't really see a lot going on in the overworld. We can see from the original E3 footage there are people in the world, like farmers and whatnot, but we really didn't see much of anything here other than horses and some deers. Understandable, it's a real big concern, but it's not one that I'm personally too worried about. I know by the game's release, things will probably be a little bit more fleshed out, and personally speaking, having a big open world without a ton of shit crammed into every nook and cranny is okay in my book. The world is filled of lots of beautiful, gorgeous vistas with not a lot in them besides, you know, grass and trees. So to me, it's not such a bad thing, but it could turn into a bad thing if there really isn't anything else going on in the overworld. But That's it for my cons, so I'm going to move over to my pros now and go over what makes me so excited about this game and share with you why I'm looking forward to this more than the past Zelda games. My number one pro is color. Now, I know this is a very common battle cry of Nintendo fans, that their games have color and all the competition does and everything's brown and gray, but I gotta be honest here, the color in this game is gorgeous. I love it. It's very lush, it's very prominent, and I really like that, and I'm really excited about that. You know, when I saw other big open world RPGs at E3, including Xenoblade X, I am a little bummed out by the fact that the color seems to be more muted. Looking at The Witcher 3, I was more excited for that than other open world games simply because it seemed to have a little bit more color than other titles. So when I'm seeing a Zelda game that's going to be taking this giant overworld idea, I really like the fact that it has a very saturated, colorful look. It excites me. It makes me want to jump into this world. So I'm very excited of the color palette in the game so far. I hope it keeps up. I hope we don't have anything that sort of takes away the color. Either way, I'm very excited by the look of the game so far. My number two pro is something that could actually change, and that is there's no known stupid gimmick. I really like it when Zelda games just try to be the best Zelda game they can be, and I really don't like it when Zelda games try to focus on a gimmick. Now, what's a gimmick? A gimmick could be anything from just a simple mechanic design in the gameplay to entirely how it controls. Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass, I don't really feel that touchscreen controls added anything. And in fact, by the time we got to A Link Between Worlds, we were back to using the circle pad. The same can be said for Skyward Sword. Nintendo tried to sell us hard on this gimmick of how they could never go back to playing a game without motion-controlled sword swipes for a Zelda game. Well, guess what? We're not using motion-controlled Wii Motion Plus for the new Zelda game. We're going back to the gamepad, we're going back to analog sticks and buttons, the way God intended it. Other stupid gimmicks for me include, of course, flying on a bird, sailing on a boat, having to like constantly reset time. I know some people really love that mechanic, but I don't really feel that saving at owl statues was a great compromise. Anyways, I love it when Zelda games are just trying to be what they are. Not trying to reinvent the wheel, not trying to add some stupid new thing to get people in. It's a dumb hook, and it's a hook that's ruined the Sonic the Hedgehog series, where Sega feels that they always need to have some new gimmick in every new Sonic game, rather than just let it be a new Sonic game. I'm glad that we're not seeing anything new here. The only new gameplay we've seen is Link can jump off his horse and fire arrows in slow motion in the air. Now, I'm pretty sure this is not going to be their main new selling point of the game. I'm sure it's just a cool little added feature, but I would really appreciate it if we didn't get to any weird, stupid gimmick that's just going to ruin the game. I like it that it's just Zelda, plain and simple. My third pro for the game is the promise to a return of sense of exploration. Anuma's been beating this drum pretty hard since E3, and I'm kind of glad he seems to be sticking with it, and that is they want to have a Zelda game where you can approach different areas and different situations from different angles. When we played the original Zelda game, and the Super NES Zelda game, and the Game Boy Zelda game, and even to an extent Ocarina of Time, I really liked having the ability to wander around the world and maybe go places I'm not supposed to go to early. Now, of course, this can get a little tricky when you want to have a sense of progression in the game, but I do feel that having more of a world open up to you early on gives you a sense of wonderment and exploration, and I wonder what's over here. I want to go explore here. Skyward Sword pretty much ruined this aspect by forcing you to go down a strict linear path, and the few areas that were in the game were structured like levels rather than actual overworld. I know some people will defend this, but I don't like it. Most every Zelda fan I know doesn't like this, and I think Enuma has realized, wow, that was a mistake. We need to go back to what made Zelda Zelda. Give it a giant, expansive world to let people explore and discover at their own free will. This seems to be one of the core philosophies behind this Zelda game, and I hope it finds its way through all the way to the end. I want to be lost in this Zelda world. I do not want to be dowsing and following a set linear path through a very small number of areas actually available to me in the game. And my final pro for this Zelda game is that it seems to be the Zelda game of my dreams, of my childhood fantasy, and my wish fulfillment. I want to point out a very specific part in the new Zelda footage, and that's right here. Now this is what I want in a Zelda game. I want to race through colorful, expansive worlds on horseback or on foot, whatever. And I want to see ruins and explore them, and I want to discover things on my own. When I look back at the original Zelda art, we see these sort of giant, expansive worlds that were never fully capable of being realized just because of the hardware limitations. But looking at the map footage from the Game Awards and looking from what we see of him riding through and seeing this classic artwork. It brings back everything that was great and wonderful and got us into the Zelda series. We wanted to jump into Hyrule. We didn't want to jump into levels like in a Mario game, which are fine for Mario. But for Zelda, we want to have this experience of just being in this whole giant other medieval kingdom. And this looks to be something they're going to deliver on for this new Zelda game. Some people were kind of bummed out by the sort of emptiness or limits of the Twilight Princess overworld, but I was about 80 to 90% happy with that game. And the last time a Zelda game fulfilled or exceeded my expectations was probably Ocarina of Time. Now with the hardware of the Wii U, granted it's not as powerful as the Bone or the PS4, we can still have a Zelda game that goes back to this style and vision, and is probably going to be able to recreate that in full now. We see rivers, lakes, oceans, mountains, and it's finally time where we can actually put a lot of them in there and not have to worry about, can the hardware handle it? Do we have to zone off the game? Do we have to put it into sections? No, we don't have to do that anymore. Games like Xenoblade and Xenoblade X are showing us that we can have giant overworlds. We can have wonderful adventures to explore and make our own stories and make our own experiences with. And I'm glad that it seems to be the MO of the Zelda team now. We're finally getting the Zelda game I've always really wanted. I want to just have a game where I can either leisurely stroll through it on my own, or I can go ham on it and try to discover every nook and cranny and lost dungeon and secret entrance to whatever. I want this, and I think most Zelda fans want this, and I think Anuma knows people want this, and I'm really excited for the first time in a new Zelda game. I was pretty skeptical of Skyward Sword before release and through and during, and Link Between Worlds was a nice surprise, of course, but it's been a really long time since I've been this excited for a Zelda game. And on everything I've seen, despite the off-screen footage, despite the early development look of the game, it excites me, unlike Zelda games have for nearly 10 years. And I'm so jazzed to get a chance to play this game, probably at E3 next year. To be honest, guys, you're probably not going to see any more of this game for another 6 months, which sucks, but at the same time, I think it'll be worth it when it does come out. I honestly feel that way. This is going to be a great Zelda game. It's going to be something to get really excited for. It's sad that the Wii U is selling still like boxed cancer, but at the end of the day, those of us who've actually bought it, we're going to win out the most in the end, because we're going to get what looks to be a fantastic Zelda experience at the end of the day. Those are my pros and cons of the new Zelda game. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you later on the channel. Later, dudes.